Today's video is brought to you by Odoo, whose suite of apps can take care of all of your business's needs in one platform. A bit later in the video, I'll show you their website app, a powerful website builder that lets you build websites quickly, easily, and for free. But first, I want to talk about how Toronto is currently undergoing a pretty impressive expansion of its public transport network. This ranges from the building of whole new subway lines, like the upcoming Ontario line, to a transformation of the city's GO commuter rail network into a turn-up-and-go RER-style system. A really fantastic project that has unfortunately hit a few recent roadblocks, to the construction of a new light rail line that will add a bunch of new useful interchanges to the city's transport network while transforming how people travel around Midtown Toronto. It's that last one, the Eglinton Crosstown LRT, that I'm going to be focusing on in this video. And while I think this project, once complete, will make a really good addition to public transport in Toronto, it has unfortunately been a bit mired in controversy, with the project running years late and costing way more than any light rail line should. Even the choice to build it as light rail has proved contentious. So in this video, I'm going to be looking back at the story of how the Eglinton Crosstown project came to be, including the various iterations of the project that were proposed before the one we got now. I'm also going to ask if light rail was the right choice for the project, and why building light rail, one of the benefits of which is its lower cost, has gotten so expensive. On top of all of that, with the project finally getting close to opening, I'll also look at how it's going to transform transit in Toronto for the better. Hi all, I'm City Moose and I make videos about transport and urbanism, so if that sounds interesting to you, consider subscribing to the channel. And if you want to support the channel, you can check out my Ko-fi, I do always appreciate it. But getting back on topic, Toronto's Eglinton Avenue is home to one of the city's busiest bus corridors, and forms a key link to one of the city's main central business districts, Midtown Toronto. At the moment, Midtown's only rapid transit links are north-south ones along the U-shaped subway line 1. There is also a streetcar service that operates on its own right-of-way along St. Clair Avenue in an east-west direction, but it doesn't run through the core part of Midtown located at the intersection of Yonge Street and Eglinton Avenue. So while Subway Line 1, running vaguely beneath Yonge Street, provides a pretty good north-south link, Eglinton Avenue has been left with buses running through mixed traffic to provide the east-west connection. As a result, there have been many proposals throughout the years to build some sort of rapid transit line along Eglinton Avenue. In 1985, the Toronto Transit Commission, or TTC, released their Network 2011 plan that proposed a number of expansions to the city's transit network with the hope of having them all in place by the year 2011. As often happens with these sorts of plans, most of the proposals didn't end up getting built, with the exception of Subway Line 4, and even then, what got built there was only a small section of what was originally proposed. That said, in those plans there were also calls for some sort of rapid transit to be added along Eglinton Avenue. Initially, the idea was to have it take the form of a dedicated busway that could run out as far as Renforth Drive. But the plans were to eventually convert that busway into a full subway or light rail line. Like much of Network 2011, nothing really came of this, although it did come surprisingly close, and not just to building a busway but a full subway line. Political pressure from various city governments along the route saw the initially planned busway dropped in favour of a subway, and work on that subway got as far as breaking ground in 1994 to start the tunnelling. But just 1 year later, Mike Harris became the new Premier of Ontario and promptly put an end to that, with those tunnels being backfilled and sealed. The next major attempt to build a rapid transit line down Eglinton Avenue came in 2007 when the Toronto City Council released their Transit City Plan. At the time, light rail was becoming quite a trendy form of transport across the world, but especially in North America, due to it being relatively cheap and quick to build, and because it could often be used as a catalyst for urban renewal and development. The Transit City Plan definitely didn't stray far from this trend and proposed that 7 new light rail lines be built in Toronto. Of those, only 2 have actually gone ahead, with those being the Line 6 Finch West LRT, which I will likely cover in a separate video, and the Eglinton Crosstown LRT. This version of the Eglinton Crosstown would run roughly from Kennedy Station in the east to the Renforth Transitway bus station and Pearson Airport in the west, with a lot of the line being street running in dedicated lanes, but with a significant underground section from Laird Drive to Keele Street. Things were looking good for the line. In 2009, the Finch West and Eglinton Crosstown line secured $7.2 billion of funding towards their construction. But then, the story of Network 2011 decided to repeat itself, And just a year later, Rob Ford came into power as Toronto's mayor with the promise of cancelling the Transit City project. Instead, Ford put forward his own idea for an Eglinton line as a fully grade separated subway rather than light rail. This version of the line would have a run in a tunnel from Mount Dennis to Kennedy, and then along the old Line 3 Scarborough's alignment to McCowan. This proposal was obviously more expensive than the partially street-running line proposed in the Transit City plan, but being fully grade separated would mean the line would have faster travel times and could support higher frequencies. Plus, while the line was cut a bit short on the western end, on the east, the decision to incorporate the Scarborough line's alignment into this line would significantly improve that line's usefulness. These plans, however, proved a bit contentious, with some in the TTC as well as Toronto City Council. There were various back and forths and even some proposed compromises, but the Transit City light rail alignment basically won out in the end, and that is effectively the line under construction at the moment, albeit split into phases. Now, I think, like with many transport projects, it's pretty clear that taking this line from idea to reality has been a very long, slow and convoluted process. But, thankfully, the same doesn't need to be the case when building your website. I've been recently using Odoo's website app, and I've been very pleasantly surprised by just how easy it's made building my own site. All it takes is 4 simple steps. First, you choose your website's type, the industry, and your goals. Then you pick your color palette, or generate one from your logo, before selecting all the pages and features you want your website to have. I'll add About Us and services, but as you can see, there are a whole lot more options ranging from a shop to live chats to appointments. Odoo then suggests some themes to get you started, or you can browse their full library, and once you pick one, your site is generated instantly. Then, if you want to customize the site, Odoo's drag and drop editor makes it really simple to add new elements. And of course, each block is itself fully customizable. You can change everything from the colors, to the fonts, to the shapes, and even add slick animations. On top of all of that, with the website app you can even get a completely free custom domain for your first year. Plus, best of all, your first Odoo app is free forever with unlimited hosting and support. So head to this link, which you can also find at the top of this video's description, when you're ready to get started. But back to the Eglinton Crosstown and the first phase of the line, which may open as soon as this year, although maybe not, will start at Mount Dennis Station for an interchange with GO Transit's Kitchener line, as well as the UP Express service to Pearson International Airport. The line then almost immediately dips underground for a stop at Keelsdale and then Caledonia, which should one day offer an interchange with GO Transit's Barrie line. But that GO station is still a way off and definitely won't be ready in time for the Eglinton Crosstown's opening. The next stops will then be at Fairbank and Oakwood before the line reaches Cedarvale, where it will provide an interchange with the Subway Line 1's current station at Eglinton West, whose name will be changed to Cedarvale when the light rail line opens. After that, the line will have stops at Forest Hill, Chaplin and Avenue before another major interchange with Subway Line 1, this time at the core of Toronto's Midtown at Eglinton Station. The line then continues to 3 more underground stations at Mount Pleasant, Leaside and Laird, before popping up above ground to run at street level in its own dedicated lanes for stops at Sunnybrook Park, Don Valley, which should offer an interchange with the Ontario line when that opens, Aga Khan Park and Museum, Winford, Sloane, O'Connor, Pharmacy, Hakimi Lebovic, Golden Mile, Birchmont, Ironview and Kennedy, for an interchange with Subway Line 2 and the GO Transit Stouffville line. The next phase of the line, which is hoped to open in either 2030 or 2031, will then extend it westwards along an elevated section with stops at Jane and Scarlett, before heading back underground for more stops at Royal York, Islington, Kipling, Martin Grove and finally Renforth, with that last stop offering transfers to the Mississauga Bus Transitway. There are even potential plans for a branch or extension to Pearson Airport, although those are still in the early days. Even without those future phases though, I think it's pretty clear the line will be providing a very substantial east-west link across Toronto and right through the heart of the Midtown Central Business District. When the line opens, it will gain the name Line 5 Eglinton and will see whole new parts of Toronto gain access to frequent rail service. But on top of that, as we've seen, it will also be creating a variety of new interchanges, with multiple GO trains and subway lines, and, according to the TTC, an impressive 54 bus routes. The line is also expected to improve travel times for commuters using the Eglinton corridor by 60%, and will have a theoretical maximum capacity of around 15,000 passengers per hour. That's about half as much capacity as Toronto's other subway lines that use heavy rail rather than light rail, but it's not really anticipated to be a problem. Ridership projections for the line expect a peak hour ridership of more around the 5,000 passengers per hour mark. Though that does bring me to the next part of the video, which is the somewhat controversial decision to use light rail for this particular route. This has been the cause of a lot of debate, and as we've seen, the project's plans have flipped between heavy rail, light rail, and even briefly bus rapid transit a few times throughout its history. Each approach has its own pros and cons. Of course, heavy rail could support higher capacities, frequencies, and speeds, but to do so it would need to be built entirely grade separated, so in tunnels or elevated, which would make it more expensive. Light rail can be built at grade, making it a lot cheaper, but doing so introduces limitations on how long the trains can be, producing capacity, and means slower speeds, because even when the trains do have their own dedicated lanes, it would be dangerous to run them too fast right next to moving car traffic, and they will still often need to stop at traffic lights. Though while light rail might be slower and lower capacity than heavy rail, both options still provide more capacity, reliability, and speed compared to the current buses that are stuck sharing lanes with other traffic. In the end, the cheaper light rail option won out, with the line using low-floor Flexity Freedom trams coupled into 2 to 3 car long sets. These sorts of low-floor trams are ideal for street running, where simple and cheap low platforms can be built in the middle of the roadway to provide access. However, what they're not really optimized for is running through long underground stretches. Not to say they can't do it, but typical subway or metro trains are generally better able to make use of the advantages that this type of grade separation comes with. As such, the choice to build the line as light rail and also to put a very significant part of it underground has been a bit of a questionable one. The choice to use light rail was obviously influenced by the fact that it's supposed to be quicker and cheaper to build. But as I'm sure anyone who's been following this particular project can tell you, that really hasn't been the case. The line was originally supposed to be finished by 2020, but 5 years on, the line has still yet to open. There are hopes it will be ready by September, but we shall see. The original contract award of the project was also set at 9.1 billion Canadian dollars, which alone is a lot for a light rail line, but recent estimates have suggested the total cost could be as high as 12.8 billion. For a bit of a comparison, Sydney, Australia has recently opened their Parramatta light rail project, which similarly is adding a light rail connection to one of the city's secondary business districts. And that project cost a substantially smaller 2.8 billion Australian dollars. Now, there were some differences between the projects. The Parramatta light rail is 12 kilometers long, compared with the 19 kilometers for the first stage of the Eglinton Crosstown, and has 9 fewer stops. However, that cost difference is still very substantial, and clearly one of the main reasons for it is that while the Parramatta light rail runs entirely at ground level, the Crosstown includes a big underground segment. Obviously, tunnelling itself is costly, but building stations underground is astronomically more expensive and complicated than simple street level ones. A low-floor light rail station at street level is not much more than just some raised pavement and a shelter, while putting those stations underground involves effectively the same amount of work as a full metro station, including excavating the station cavern, building lifts and escalators and fire exits, and so much more. Unsurprisingly, underground stations can cost 20 to 50 times more to build than simple street-level tram stops, and given around half of the Crosstown Phase 1 stations have been put underground, I think we can start to see how this project has gotten as expensive as it has. That's not to say building underground was the wrong choice for this project. It might be more expensive, but being grade separated comes with a lot of benefits. It means trains can run faster, have higher capacities and better frequencies. But a lot of these benefits are lost when the line also then has to run at street level. Unlike some other commentators, I don't take the view that using street-running light rail was the wrong choice for this project, but I do think mixing street-running light rail with metro-like underground segments kinda gets you the worst of both worlds. The underground segments make it very expensive, and the street-running segments make it slower and reduce its potential capacity. I personally think it would have been better to pick either fully street-running light rail or fully grade-separated metro than the current hybrid approach. So then, why didn't they? Well, I think one of the main reasons was to avoid taking away too much road space from cars. Especially on the line's western half, most of Eglinton Avenue is just 4 lanes wide, and adding dedicated light rail lanes would have seen that reduced to just 2. Naturally, this would cause concerns with motorists as they'd lose some precious road capacity, but much like how the principle of induced demand means that when you add lanes to a road you increase traffic, the same principle also means that when you remove lanes, traffic will likely decrease. Looking back to Sydney, we saw that exact thing happen there with another of the city's light rail projects. The City and South East Light Railway required the closure of George Street, one of the main road arteries through the Sydney Central Business District, and predictably this caused a bit of uproar from drivers. However, since George Street's closure and pedestrianisation, traffic through the Central Business District has, if anything, improved, and George Street has become a much more pleasant place to be. As a result, I think converting some car lanes along the western sections of Eglinton Avenue into tram lanes would have been viable, and if it had been done, this project would have ended up costing a whole lot less. If they really didn't want to lose the road space, then I think they should have bitten the bullet and built the whole thing as a subway. It would have cost more, but I think the benefits could have justified it. The subway would have more capacity than would be needed for the current ridership estimates of around 5,000 people per hour, but I would say, with future densification along the route, that additional capacity would have eventually come in handy. A better middle ground option could have been to use elevated light metro, like the Vancouver SkyTrain. It would have taken up less street space than light rail, but would benefit from the faster speeds and higher capacities that come with being grade separated, while still having a lower cost than an underground system. Regardless, hindsight is 2020 and the project has been built the way it has. And even if I don't really agree with all the choices that were made, I'm still ultimately happy to see this project almost complete. I have no doubt it will grow to become a key east-west link across Toronto, and all the new interchanges it's going to bring will generally help make the city's transit network better connected, and less focus on just getting people into downtown. That said, I hope this project can act as a learning opportunity. When project budgets and timelines blow out like this, it can make it more difficult politically for future extensions or other transport projects to get off the ground. So, in the future, if we're going to build light rail, let's build it in a way that takes advantage of all that mode's benefits. And if we're going to build grade separated, let's choose a transport mode that can take full advantage of that. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel. If you want to support the channel, you can check out my Ko-fi, I do always appreciate it. With that all said, I'm Kyle, aka City Moose, and as always, thanks for watching.